Hello everyone, I am the Storyteller. I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Get comfortable and relax. It started on a Tuesday night, close to midnight. I was sitting in my living room staring at the TV, feeling bored and a bit restless. I remember the sound of a knocking on my front door. It was 3 knocks, not too loud, not too soft, just clear and direct. I got up right away, walked to the door and looked through the peephole. There was nobody there. I opened the door and looked outside. The porch light was on and I could see my front yard. On the empty street, there was nothing unusual. I stood there a few seconds, stepped out to check around. But I didn't see anything. I went back inside, locked the door and sat down. I told myself it was probably some random noise. The next night around the same time, I heard the knocking again. 3 knocks, very similar. I paused the movie I was watching and rushed to the door. I checked through the peephole. First, no one. I opened the door and looked out, same situation, porch light. On street, empty, no movement, no sounds, just stillness. I felt confused. I wasn't scared, yet I was just annoyed and a bit puzzled. I thought maybe it was some prank. I stood outside for a while, hoping to catch someone hiding behind a bush or a car, but I didn't see anyone. The air felt heavy, but that was just my nerves. I went back inside and locked up the 3rd night. I was ready. I stayed in the hallway near the front door, waiting, watching the time. It was just before midnight when I heard the knocks again. 3 knocks, same pattern. I threw the door open immediately. The outside light was on. Nothing moved. I tried to catch someone running away, but there was no one there. I stepped out and looked left and right. Nobody on the sidewalk, nobody in the yard, nobody in the street. The houses around me were quiet and dark-eyed. Listened carefully, nothing. I walked around the front of my house, looked at the sides, just grass and the neighbor's fence. No footprints, no broken branches. Nothing out of place. I felt something inside my stomach twist a little. My chest felt tight. I realized this wasn't normal, but I tried to stay calm. I went back inside and locked the door. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept waking up, checking the door, looking out the window. No more knocks. Came on the 4th night. It happened again, 3 knocks right before midnight. By this time, I was feeling more tense. My breathing got faster when I heard it. My palms felt sweaty. I was getting irritated and a little bit scared. I rushed to the door. Again, checked the peephole, opened it again. Not a single sign of anyone. The street was empty. The houses were quiet. I stood outside and said, "Who's there?" I said it in a normal voice at first, then louder. I felt stupid talking to the empty air. No one answered. A breeze came by and I felt cold. I went back and heart beating hard and locked up. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Someone knocks and disappears every night. It sounded ridiculous. Besides, no one threatened me, no one broke anything. It was just knocking. After a week of this, I decided I needed proof. If I could record someone doing it, I could show it to the cops or at least figure out who was messing with me. I bought a small camera that connected to my Wi-Fi and had night vision. I installed it above my door, facing the entrance, and made sure it covered a good portion of the front yard and the walkway. I tested it during the day. The image was clear. I could see everything. I synced it with my phone so I could watch live if I wanted. I thought this was going to solve everything. That night, I sat in my living room with my phone in hand. A few minutes before midnight, I turned the TV off. I listened closely. My heartbeat was steady. I was determined to catch whoever was right. On Skeeter 3 knocks, I jumped up and opened the app. The feed was there, but it looked strange. The image seemed a bit distorted. I could see my porch light and part of the walkway, but the rest looked fuzzy. The connection was strong, so that wasn't normal. I ran to the door and opened it. No one was there. I checked the camera's live feed again. The distortion was worse. It looked like static, a kind of interference. After a few seconds, the image stabilized. The walkway looked empty. I replayed the footage and saw something weird right before the knock. There was a dark shape moving toward my door. It looked like a faint shadow, hard to define. As soon as the shape got close, the video started to glitch. Then, after a moment, the shape was gone and the image was clear again. I watched this replay over and over, trying to make sense of it. My eyes got tired from staring at the screen. I felt my neck tense up. and my head started to hurt. I didn't understand what I was seeing. It didn't look like a person it looked like. A vague outline like a shadow that wasn't attached to anything I know I'm not supposed to use any weird descriptions, but I can't find a better way to say it. It was just a dark shape, unclear, and hard to describe, moving in a straight line toward my door. There was no detail, no face, no clothing, just darkness. And once it reached my door, the camera went crazy, like it couldn't focus, or could process what it was seeing the next night. I positioned myself near the front window. I turned off all the lights inside, hoping to see something outside before it knocked out. Placed my phone on the coffee table with the live feed open, so I could check both outside with my eyes and on the screen eye. Waited. My breathing was shallow, my hands were shaky. I felt my heart pounding in my chest as it got close to midnight. When I heard the first knock, I tried to look through the window quietly, but I didn't see anything. It was just the front yard and the light shining down. I checked my phone, and again the camera feed was messed up. The static and distortion were there like last time. I tried to open the door fast, but again, nothing outside. The night was silent, the street empty. I felt a strong urge to leave my house and not come back. I didn't know what I was dealing with. My stomach felt sick, my mouth was dry-eyed. Paced around the living room, trying to calm down. I told myself I would try a different approach. The knocking always happened at the same time. Always 3 knocks, whatever it was, it didn't cause physical damage. It just knocked. I tried to imagine it was some sort of weird mechanical glitch, something with the pipes or the door frame. But the camera footage showed otherwise. There was something approaching, something that made the camera malfunction the night after that. I decided to stay awake. Outside in my car parked across the street, I wanted to see my house from a distance. If someone came to my door, I could see them. I left all the lights on inside the house. I set the camera to record. I sat in my car, engine off, windows slightly cracked for air. It was dark and quiet. I could see my front door clearly around midnight. I heard the knocks, but I heard them faintly because I was in the car. I focused on the door. I didn't see anyone standing there. I saw the light on my porch, the doorway, the walkway. It all looked normal, yet I heard 3 knocks clear as day. Even from where I sat, no one was there. I felt sweat on my forehead. My back felt cold against the car seat. My heart beat faster. I turned my phone on and checked the camera. Again, the camera feed was static and fuzzy. At the knocking moment, I felt a wave of panic in my chest. I got out of the car and walked slowly to my house. My legs felt weak, like they might give out at any second. My hands were shaking. I opened the door and looked around my living room. Everything was the way I left it. I went to the camera's recorded footage and watched it. Same thing, a dark shape moved toward my door. The image went crazy, then cleared up, and the shape was gone. There were no footsteps, no sound other than the knocks. It was always 3 knocks. The shape had no clear form. It just moved in a straight line and vanished. I decided to call the police the next day. I told them someone was knocking at my door late at night and running away. They sent a patrol car after dark. 2 officers stayed in their car at the end of the block, watching my house. They kept radio contact with me. The time came, I heard the knocks again. I called them right away. They said they saw nothing. No one approached my house. They got out of their car and walked around. They found nothing. When I reviewed the camera footage, I saw the same shape, again the same distortion. I told the cops about the video. They looked at it on my phone, shrugged, and said it must be some glare or a camera malfunction. They seemed frustrated that I was calling them for nothing concrete. I could see they were annoyed. I didn't blame them. I had no explanation that night. After they left, I felt more alone. I had no help. I considered staying at a friend's place, but I didn't want to explain this to anyone. It sounded crazy. I tried to come up with a plan. I thought about turning off the porch light to see if that changed anything. I thought about placing more than 1 camera. So I went and bought 2 extra cameras. The next morning, I installed one on the side of my house, covering the walkway from a different angle, and one inside the front window pointing out. I tested them all day, and they worked perfectly. The images were clear and stable, no issues. When night came, I turned off the porch light and relied only on the camera's night vision. I sat in my living room with a baseball bat in my hand. I don't know what I planned to do with it. but holding it made me feel a bit safe in my throat. It was dry and I felt a slight headache creeping and the time passed slowly. House was quiet, then close to midnight, I heard the knocks, 3 knocks the same pattern, but this time the sound was softer. I checked the camera's live all. 3 showed static and distortion. I couldn't see anything clearly. I got up, opened the door fast, and stepped outside. I swung the bat in the air expecting someone to be there. Nothing, no one, just a quiet street. I felt the cool air on my skin. I didn't see anything move, just stillness. I went back inside and locked the door. I checked the recorded footage from all 3 cameras. Each camera showed the same thing, a dark shape approaching the image, going bad, and then the shape was gone from the side angle. I noticed that the shape had no height. I could measure it, just moved in a straight line from the front window angle. I saw the distortion start before the shape was fully visible, like the camera sensed it before it came into view. The inside camera just showed static and then cleared up. None of the cameras showed a person, no face, no body, no clothing, nothing recognizable. I tried cleaning the cameras, resetting them, changing their positions every night, the same knocking, the same distortion. I started to feel weaker. Every time it happened, my chest felt tight, and I had trouble sleeping during the day. I was jumpy and alert, checking the windows and doors for anything strange at night. I felt dread build up in my stomach. As midnight approached, I drank water, paced around, tried to calm myself. The knocks always came 3 times. I considered leaving my house for good, but it was my home, and I didn't want to run away without understanding what was happening. One night I decided not to open the door at all. I sat in the dark and listened. The knocks came. I stayed still, holding my breath. My heart pounded. I watched the camera feeds on my phone. All 3 showed the same static. I didn't open the door. After a few seconds of knocking stopped, the static ended, the shape vanished. It never tried to break it, never tried to open the door. It only knocked. I realized that I had no idea why this was happening, but it seemed to follow a pattern. I tried ignoring it the next night, saying thing KNX static, then gone every time at the same hour, always 3 knocks after. A few days of this I became numb to it. I still felt fear, but I tried to hide it. I prepared each night by turning off the TV, turning off most lights, and watching the camera feeds. The knocks came. I didn't answer. The shape arrived on the camera feed. Distortion followed, then it left. I never found any physical evidence outside. No footprints, no scratches on the door, no sign that anyone had been there. Now I don't know how to end the story, because it never ended for me. It's still happening every night. 3 knocks, a dark shape on the camera, a few seconds of static, then nothing. I sleep badly, wake up tired, and go to work feeling anxious. I don't have a solution, and I don't have proof that would make sense to anyone. I have strange videos and my own memories, though cops don't care, neighbors don't notice anything. I don't tell friends because I don't want them to think I've lost my mind. I just deal with it. It's been going on for weeks now, and it's always the same. No escalation, no final confrontation. I don't know what it is. I only know that every night right before midnight, I hear 3 knocks on my door, and when I check the camera, I see a dark shape that makes the video feed go bad, then it disappears without a trace. It doesn't matter what I do, it keeps happening. I'm stuck with this routine. I feel tense all the time, and my chest hurts from holding my breath whenever I expect the knocks to come. That's all there is to say. It's happening. I can't stop it, and I can't explain it. That's my story. No doors closing. I felt my stomach tighten, and my pulse was loud in my ears. I put my key into the lock and opened my door. I went inside and locked it right away. I stood there, and my small entry was holding the door knob. My apartment felt normal. The living room lights were off, but a little glow came from the kitchen where I'd left a small light on. Everything looked the same as when I left that morning. I took off my shoes and placed them on the mat by the door. I walked through the living room, turned on a lamp, and checked the windows. They were all closed. I leaned against the kitchen counter for a moment and tried to shake off the weird feeling. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe he went into one of the apartments quickly, so I didn't see him. That must have been it. I told myself not to overthink it. I heated some leftovers in the microwave and ate standing in the kitchen. The food tasted bland, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention to the taste. I turned on the TV in the living room and flipped through channels. I found nothing interesting, just random shows and commercials. I turned it off. Again, I wasn't in the mood to watch anything. I tried to focus on regular things. I checked my emails. I looked at my messages. Nothing unusual. After a while, I got ready for bed. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and got into bed. The feeling of the sheets was familiar and soft. I turned off the lamp on the nightstand and closed my eyes. I must have fallen asleep quickly, because the next thing I remember was waking up suddenly in the dark. My digital clock read 3:00 a.m. I didn't know what had woken me at first, but then I heard it again, a knock at my door. 3 quick dull thuds. I sat up, my heart thumping. I turned on the bedside lamp. The knock came again. It was a bit louder this time. I reached for my phone. I checked the time again. It was still just after 3 o'clock in the morning. There was no reason for anyone to knock on my door at this hour. I stayed still and listened. No voices, no footsteps, just silence. Then the knock came again. I got out of bed, moved to the door as quietly as I could. I stood by it and waited. Another knock, softer this time, but steady. I leaned my eye against the peephole. I saw nothing. The hallway light was on, but I didn't see anyone standing there, just the empty hallway. I looked carefully. No shadows, no shapes, nothing. My stomach tightened again. I stepped back and considered calling someone, maybe the building security desk, but I had never spoken to them at this hour, and I wasn't sure if they were always there. My building did have a small lobby area with a desk, but I had seen the security guard mostly during the day. I didn't know if anyone was there now. The knocking stopped. I held my breath and waited. Silence. I felt my heart slowing down a bit. I hoped it was just some drunk neighbor knocking on the wrong door, and then wandering off. I looked again through the peephole. Still nothing. I turned and moved away from the door, heading back toward my bedroom. I reached my bed and sat down on the edge. I listened. Nothing, no sounds, except the hum of my fridge in the kitchen. I turned off the bedside lamp and tried to lie down again. I couldn't sleep right away. My eyes were open, staring at the dark ceiling. I waited for any noise, any sign that something wasn't right. After a few minutes, I started feeling my eyelids getting heavy. Just as I began to drift off, I heard the knock again. It was the same 3 dull knocks. No variation in rhythm. I sat up straight. My body felt rigid. I stood up and marched back to the door, trying to keep my breathing quiet. I switched on the hallway light inside my apartment, unlocked the door, and opened it just a crack. I kept the chain on. I looked out through the small opening. No one. The corridor was completely empty. The overhead lights were bright. I saw the doors of the other apartments all closed. No movement. Hello, I said quietly. I got no response. My voice sounded small and shaky. I closed the door again and locked it. My hands felt sweaty. I wiped them on my pajama pants. I stood there for a moment, pressing my ear to the door, listening. Nothing, just the buzz of the hallway lights. I took a few steps back. I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone was messing with me. I walked to the window in my living room that overlooked the street. I pushed the curtain aside and looked down. The street was empty except for a few parked cars. No one was out there. It was quiet. A few lamps lit the sidewalk, but I didn't see anyone moving around. I stood there for a while, waiting to see if I could catch someone leaving the building. Nothing. I thought about the stranger in the elevator. I remembered how he followed me down the hallway and then vanished. I wondered if he had something to do with this. I didn't understand how he could disappear so fast. There was no place to hide. The hallway is straight, no turns, no extra doors other than the apartments. If he lived here, he would have needed a key, and I would have heard a door open, but I didn't want to think about that now. I just wanted to get through the night. I went back to my bedroom and turned on the light. There I pulled a chair from the desk and placed it near the door of my bedroom, facing the apartment's front door. I sat there, arms folded, trying to stay awake. I listened to the quiet apartment. The walls were thin enough that I might hear neighbors if they were talking or playing music, but it was silent. I could only hear my own breathing. Time passed slowly. I checked my phone. It was around 3:30 a.m. I kept waiting, expecting another knock. My muscles felt tense. My mouth was dry. I got up once to get a glass of water from the kitchen. I returned with the water and sipped it quietly. Nothing happened eventually around 4 a.m. I decided to try to sleep again. I got into bed, leaving the bedroom light on. I felt safer with it on. I closed my eyes, but every few seconds I opened them to listen. I forced myself to relax, to focus on my breathing. After some time, I drifted off. I slept lightly without any real rest. When I woke up, it was 8 a.m. The sun came in through the window. I rubbed my face and stood up. My neck was stiff. I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole again. The hallway looked normal in the morning light. I unlocked and opened the door, stepping out to check if there was anything on the ground. Nothing. The hallway smelled like cleaning products. I saw one of my neighbors leaving for work. He nodded at me and said, "Good morning." I nodded back and didn't mention anything. I got dressed and went down to the lobby. The elevator ride felt tense, but I was alone. This time, when I reached the lobby, I saw the guard at the front desk. He was an older man I had spoken to once or twice. I approached him and asked if someone had come in late last night, if anyone reported strange knocks or noises. He shook his head and said it had been quiet. I described the man in the elevator. He said he hadn't seen anyone like that on his shift. He looked at me as if I were a bit paranoid. I didn't press the issue. I decided to check the mailroom before heading out. I had a package waiting. I picked it up and went outside. The morning air felt cool. I walked up the block to get coffee. I thought about what happened. I tried to push it out of my mind, but it kept nagging at me. I knew what I saw and heard. That man was definitely in the elevator. He definitely got off on my floor. He followed me, then he vanished. And then there were those knocks at my door at 3 a.m. Without anyone there, I took my coffee back upstairs and sat in my living room. I looked around. Everything seemed normal in daylight. The furniture, the walls, my TV, my kitchen, nothing was out of place. I tried the door's peephole again just to see if the perspective somehow tricked me at night. I looked through it, saw the hallway. Everything looked clear and bright, no distortions. I spent most of that day in my apartment, working from home, trying to focus on my tasks. I answered emails, did some online research, made a few phone calls. I didn't mention the incident to anyone. By lunchtime, I had calmed down. But every now and then I glanced at the door, expecting a knock. No knock came. I listened for footsteps in the hallway. I heard normal sounds, neighbors coming and going, doors opening and closing, muffled voices in the evening. I thought about the elevator ride again. I tried to remember details about the stranger. I remembered his jacket, his jeans, his hair, the way he stood quietly. I remembered the exact spot in the elevator where he stood. I remembered that he never looked at me. I remembered how he followed me at the same pace, almost like a mirror, and I remembered how he was gone in an instant. Before going to bed that night, I checked the doors locked twice. I checked the windows. I left a hallway light on. I took a shower and got into bed. I was still worried something might happen again, but that night nothing did. No knocks, no footsteps, no strange visitors. The next morning I felt more rested. I got up, made coffee, and left for work at my usual time. I tried to put it behind me. Over the next few days, I kept my guard up, looking around, checking who got into the elevator with me. But I never saw that man again. The hallway remained calm and ordinary. No strange knocking at 3 a.m. Still, I didn't forget how it felt. I remembered standing in that elevator, watching him not press any button. I remembered walking down the hallway, listening to him match my steps, and then seeing him vanish. I remembered the knocks and how I never saw anyone through the peephole. These were facts. I saw and heard them, no matter how normal things looked afterward. That feeling of confusion and tension stayed in my mind. Even though I moved on with my life, I kept the memory of that night clear. I had no explanation for it. I didn't dwell on deeper meanings or strange theories. I just knew it happened. I knew what I heard and what I saw, and I knew I never wanted to experience it again. I remember that night because I was tired, a little hungry, and I just wanted to get home. I had worked late. My shift ended around 9 o'clock, and I had walked a few blocks in the wrong direction because of some construction. I wanted to save some time. I decided to cut through an alley I usually avoided. It wasn't pitch dark, but the light was dim. There was a single street light near the entrance, and the rest of the alley stretched out with only a bit of light coming from the windows of the buildings on either side. I could see old trash. Cans of few cardboard boxes, some scattered plastic bags, and dirty puddles. The place smelled like stale beer and old garbage. I remember the sound of distant traffic behind me, but inside the alley was mostly quiet. I stepped in trying to keep my feet away from the wet spots on the ground. I tried to move. Quickly, the alley ran straight for a while, and then turned right, which I knew would bring me closer to my apartment. Building as I walked, I heard a soft sound like someone shifting their weight on a loose piece of pavement, but when I turned I saw nothing. I shrugged it off. Sometimes there were rats, or maybe a cat. I tried not to think too much about it. I was about halfway through when I heard my name at first. I imagined it was barely louder than a whisper. I froze and looked behind me. There was no one there. I looked to my left and my right. The alley was empty. I could see the rough brick walls on either side. A few old posters were peeling off. One of the trash cans had its lid half open, and there was some shredded plastic sticking out. I saw nothing else. I waited a moment, listening. All I heard was a distant hum of traffic and maybe a dripping pipe somewhere. I turned forward again and walked now, feeling a bit uneasy. My heart thumped a little hard and my skin felt warm around my neck. I tried to act calm, but I looked behind me once more. Still nothing. That's when I heard it again. My name. It was clearer this time, and it sounded closer. Someone said it quietly, like they were standing just a few steps away. I spun around. The alley was still empty. I said, "Who's there?" out loud. My voice sounded too loud in that quiet place. No response. I looked carefully. I could see the details of the walls, the ground, even some small cracks. I saw no place where a person could hide. There were no doors nearby, no recessed doorways, no large piles of trash tall enough to hide a person behind them. Only a few small boxes and cans. Nothing big. The alley was maybe 8 or 9 feet wide, and I could see from one wall to the other. There was nowhere for someone to stand. Without me noticing, I took a deep breath. I felt a heaviness in my stomach. Something was off. I said my own name out loud to see if my mind was playing tricks on me. It sounded different from what I heard. The voice calling me sounded softer and slightly deeper than my own. It definitely wasn't an echo. I tried to ignore it and kept walking, but a few steps later, I heard it again, this time from ahead of me. I stared forward. I could see the corner where the alley turned. I strained my eyes, but there was no one. The light was weak. The street light behind me didn't reach that far. The only illumination came from a small window on the second floor of the building to my left, and it was too faint to show more than shapes. I walked forward slowly, trying not to make noise. My shoes scraped a bit on the concrete. I tried to keep my breathing steady. I knew something was wrong. It wasn't just hearing my name. It was the feeling that someone was right there close to me, watching me. My neck felt tense, and my shoulders were tight. My palms were getting sweaty, and my throat felt dry. I wanted to get out of that alley as fast as possible, but I also didn't want to walk straight into whoever was playing this game. I reached into my jacket pocket for my phone. I gripped it tight. I considered calling someone. The thought that I might seem paranoid stopped me. I decided to just keep moving. I took a few more steps, and then I heard my name again right behind me. This time I spun around so fast that I almost slipped on a wet patch. Still no one. My heart was beating harder. I could feel my pulse in my ears. I looked up at the fire escapes overhead, but they were empty metal structures. No one stood on them. There were no shadows up there. I stood still for at least 20 seconds, turning my head from side to side, trying to catch any movement. Nothing, just the dim light, the smell of trash, the quiet drip of water. I could hear my own breathing, now fast and shallow. I wanted to run, but I didn't want to run blindly and fall or get cornered. Instead, I walked backward for a few steps, keeping my eyes in front of me and then behind me, alternating every few seconds. That made me dizzy, so I stopped and faced forward again. If someone was there, they were hiding too well, but how could they hide in a place like this? I reached a turn in the alley. I stepped around the corner, pressing my back against the wall. Before looking ahead, the next stretch of alley was even darker. There was a dim light at the far end, probably from a distant street lamp. I could see broken concrete and a large dumpster on the left side. The dumpster's lid was closed. There was a small stack Of sea crates near it, they were wooden, probably empty. I could see a patch of moss or mold on the ground and a slight incline leading toward the main street at the far, and I knew my building was. Just a short walk after I got out of here, I took a step forward, and as soon as I moved, I heard my name again this time. It seemed to come from my right side. I looked right, there was nothing but a wall, no doors, no windows at eye level. I noticed a small ventilation window near the top, but it was too high for anyone to reach. I listened carefully. Nothing now. I licked my lips and tasted salt from my sweat. My heart was still racing. I said, I know you're there. What do you want? I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked slightly. No answer. I walked closer to the dumpster, thinking maybe someone was crouching behind it. I approached it slowly, one hand gripping my phone in my pocket. My other hand was free. I felt the urge to clench my fist as I got near. I smelled something rotten, probably old food. I reached the edge of the dumpster and leaned forward, trying to peek behind it. It was empty space, no one there. I kicked the crates with my foot. They were light and slid a bit, but nothing was behind them. Suddenly, my name again. This time it was so close. I jumped. It sounded right next to my ear. I turned around, almost losing my balance. The alley behind me was empty, just as before. My chest felt tight, and I wanted to leave this place. I walked faster now, almost jogging, but careful not to slip. My shoes made a damp sound on the ground. Every few steps I glanced behind me. Still nothing. The alley felt longer than before. I noticed details I hadn't before. A small pipe with water dripping, a torn piece of fabric stuck to a nail on the wall, a flattened soda can near a drain. I heard my name again, this time from ahead of me, softer, but still there. I stopped and held my breath. I thought maybe I could lure whoever was into making a sound, so I could spot them. I waited 5-10 seconds, holding my breath until my chest started to burn. Then I let out the air and said, show yourself. Nothing, just silence. I kept walking. My legs felt weak, and my stomach kept twisting. I tried to focus on getting out. My apartment was just a short walk. Once I reached the main street, I passed another stack of trash bags. They looked wet and sagged against the wall. I nudged one with my foot, trying to see if someone could be hiding behind it. It was soft and squishy, just trash. I moved past it. Halfway down the second stretch, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I jumped at the sensation. I pulled it out and checked it. It was just a message from a coworker asking if I had made it home. I typed back quickly. Almost on my way. I didn't mention anything about what was happening. I didn't know how to explain it. It sounded crazy. I put the phone back in my pocket and looked around again. I could see the end of the alley now, maybe 20 yards ahead. Beyond it was a more well-lit street. I could see parts of parked cars, the edge of a sidewalk, and a bit of a storefront sign. If I could get there, I'd feel safer. I moved forward. 10 yards left. I felt a breeze coming from the street. It carried the smell of exhaust fumes and fried food from a nearby diner. I wanted to run, but I forced myself not to. If I ran and tripped, I'd be stuck here. I took steady steps. With every step, I glanced to the sides. Behind me, above me, there was nothing, just the same empty alley. But the voice wouldn't leave my mind. I kept hearing it in my head now, even when it wasn't sounding in the air. It made me tense, made me question my own senses. 5 yards left, and I heard it again, but this time it didn't say my name. It just made a soft sound like a quiet exhale. I stopped and listened. The sound came from behind me. I turned. The alley behind me looked exactly the same, dark, empty, quiet. I listened harder. Nothing, just my own breathing and the distant city sounds. I said, I can hear you. I felt stupid saying no answer. I turned back toward the street and took those last steps. When I reached the end of the alley, I stood there, half in darkness, half in the glow of the street lights. I looked back into the alley one last time. I wanted to see if something would move now that I was leaving. The alley was still empty, just wet pavement, trash, and dim walls. I waited a few seconds, listening, expecting to hear my name again. It didn't come. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. The street was calm. One car passed slowly. I saw a man leaning against a wall about half a block away, smoking. He didn't look at me. I saw a couple walking on the opposite side of the street, holding shopping bags. They didn't look my way. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. My heart rate was still high. My shirt Felt damp with sweat. I wiped my forehead with the back of my hand. My mouth was dry. I swallowed a few times. I turned in the direction of my apartment. It was only 2 blocks away. I walked fast, trying to get some distance from that alley. My mind was racing, but I tried to focus on what was right in front of me. I passed a closed bookstore, a barbershop, with its lights off, a couple of old benches on the sidewalk. After a few minutes, I reached my building. It was a 3-story structure with a small lobby. I had to use my key to enter. My hand shook a bit. As I unlocked the door, once inside, I walked straight up the stairs to my apartment on the 2nd floor. The hallway smelled like cleaning products. The light was bright. I fumbled with my keys, unlocked my door, and entered my apartment, locking the door behind. My place was quiet, just my old couch, my small TV, my kitchen table. Everything looked normal. I sat down at the table and just breathed in and out until my heart slowed down. I could still feel the tension in my shoulders and neck. I didn't know what to think. I heard my name whispered several times, and I saw no one. The alley was empty. I had no explanation. My body still felt tired, my legs a bit shaky. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet and filled it with tap water. I drank it in a few big gulps. I felt a slight ache in my stomach, probably from all the nervous energy. I took another minute to calm down. Then I walked to my living room window and looked outside. I could see the street, the lights in the distant corner where I knew that alley entrance was located. I couldn't see the alley itself from this angle. I stood there for a long moment, just looking at the normal scene. Outside, a car parked. A man crossed the street. Someone rode by on a bike. No strange voices, no whispers, just normal city sounds. Eventually, I pulled the curtains closed. I decided I would avoid that alley from now on, no matter how inconvenient. I felt safer in my apartment. It was quiet, well lit, and everything made sense here. I stayed up for a while that night, drinking water, pacing a bit, trying to shake off the feeling that something had been there, calling me, messing with me. I knew I wouldn't find any answers. I just knew I didn't want to go through that alley again. When I finally turned off the lights and lay down in bed, I could still remember the exact sound of my name spoken softly in that empty space. I tried not to think about it too much. I was just glad to be inside with a locked door and a clear sense that I had gotten away from something I couldn't understand. I remember that night clearly. It was late, probably past midnight. The streets were almost empty, and the air felt colder than usual. I was tired, but still focused on my job. I was working as a driver for a ride service. I had been on the road for several hours, picking up passengers in different parts of the city. Most were normal trips, people going home from bars, a couple going to a hotel, a man rushing to catch a late-night train. Nothing unusual. Then I got this request. The pickup point was at the edge of a residential area not too far from the center. I accepted it without a second thought. Like any other ride, I pulled up at the address the app had given me. It was a street with dim lighting, a couple of old houses, a few small parked cars, and not much else. I waited about a minute. The passenger approached from the sidewalk on my right. He was a man, probably in his mid-40s. He wore a jacket, jeans, and sneakers. He walked slowly and didn't seem drunk or high. He opened the rear door and got inside without saying much. He closed the door and gave me a location. I glanced at the destination pin on my phone. It was outside the city, close to a rural area about 30 minutes away. I thought it was a little odd, but it wasn't my first time driving someone out of town. Sometimes people had family in isolated places, or they wanted to get away from the city. For some reason, I pressed the start button on the app and began driving. The streets were quiet as I followed the directions. The man sat in the back seat. He kept his gaze somewhere in the darkness outside. He didn't talk at first. After about 10 minutes, I asked if he was comfortable with the route. He just said, "Keep going," in a calm voice. I didn't push. I kept driving. The GPS showed a route that would take a main road, then turn onto smaller roads. There weren't many lights in that direction, but I knew some rural areas had very few street lamps. I tried not to think too hard about it. The passenger didn't show any emotion. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning. He looked calm. His voice when he spoke was steady and quiet. We left the main part of town and entered a smaller road with fewer signs. There were patches of trees and bushes on both sides the headlights of. My car illuminated a narrow strip of asphalt. Ahead the sky was dark with no stars visible. The passenger suddenly said, "Take a right turn up ahead." I checked my GPS, but it said to go straight. I hesitated for a second, then slowed down. The man repeated, "Take the right turn." His voice was louder now. I felt a slight tension in my CH. Tested. Wasn't panic yet, but I was aware that something was off. I asked, "Are you sure?" "The GPS suggests going straight." He said, "Yes, right turn, don't worry about the app." I turned right onto a smaller road. It was even darker here. The asphalt gave way to a rough surface with dirt and gravel. I heard small rocks rattling under my tires. I clenched the wheel and tried to focus on the path ahead. My headlight were the only source of light. The passenger leaned forward slightly, but I couldn't see his face clearly in the rear-view mirror. His figure was a dark shape against the seat. After a few minutes, the road split again. The GPS was useless now, trying to reroute in confusion. The passenger told me to turn left. I did. We went deeper into this area. With no signs and no buildings, my heart rate increased. The interior of the car felt warm even though it was cold outside. I noticed my breathing was getting faster. I asked, "Is this place safe?" "It's really dark out here," he answered quietly. "Yes, keep going." I didn't argue. I just drove. We passed a small clearing where I could see a fence and some overgrown grass. There were no animals around, no other cars, not even the distant hum of traffic, just the sound of my engine and the gravel. After another turn, the passenger said, "Stop here." I slowed down and brought the car to a halt. I looked around, but I couldn't see anything except a vague outline of trees and a patch of ground covered in weeds. The headlights illuminated a short stretch ahead, but it ended in darkness. There were no lights on any distant houses, no porch lamps, nothing. The passenger opened the door and stepped out. He didn't say anything about payment. The ride was prepaid through the app, so I guessed he was done. He stood outside for a moment. I rolled down my window slightly and said, "Is everything all right?" He didn't answer. He just moved away from the car and disappeared into the darkness ahead. I couldn't see where he went. He didn't use a flashlight or his phone screen. It was like he knew exactly where to go. I felt uneasy. My mouth was dry and my hands were clammy on the steering wheel. I decided I should probably leave. There was nothing else for me to do here. I shifted into reverse and checked my mirrors. That's when I saw something that made my stomach tighten. In the rear view mirror, I noticed two shapes in the darkness behind the car. They were a distance away, maybe 20 or 30 foot back. I couldn't see their faces, but I could make out two human figures. They stood side by side, not moving much. My first thought was to stay calm. I wanted to get out of there. I looked forward again, trying to see if the passenger was still in front of the car. I saw nothing, just the silent darkness. I turned on my high beams for a moment, hoping to see something that would put me at ease, but all I got was a better look at empty ground and some bushes. I turned the high beams off again. I didn't want to attract too much attention. In the mirror, the two figures were still there. I couldn't tell if they were looking at me. My heart was pounding. I considered rolling down the window and calling out, but I decided against it. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know if they were armed or if they meant any harm. My chest felt tight, and I could feel sweat on my neck. The silence made everything worse. There was no wind, no cars, no voices, just me in that car with two strangers standing behind it, and my passenger gone somewhere ahead. I started to back up, slowly moving in reverse, hoping to put some distance between me and the figures. As I reversed, I kept my eyes on them. They didn't run toward me. They stayed where they were when my brake lights lit. The area behind the car, I saw them more clearly. They were definitely two people, both wearing dark clothing. I couldn't see their faces. Their heads were slightly bent forward, or maybe they were just looking straight at me. My chest felt even tighter. Now I swallowed hard. I stopped the car again and thought about what to do. The passenger had told me to come here, had made me leave the known route. Now I was stuck in a remote spot with no streetlights. I had one bar of self-service, maybe enough to get back on the map. I glanced at my phone. The app was still running. The screen showed my location as a dead-end road in a rural zone. I had no idea where I was exactly. I locked the doors, I heard the click of the locks, and hoped that would be enough. If they tried something, they still didn't move. They just stood there. I wondered if they were waiting for something or if they were just curious. I looked around for another way out. The road was narrow to my left and right. There were bushes and small trees. I didn't want to drive off the road and get stuck. I needed to stay calm and not do anything stupid. I took a deep breath and decided to drive forward a bit and then try to turn around. I put the car and drive and ease it forward. The road was rough, and I felt every bump. The headlights showed nothing but empty space and weeds. I drove maybe 40 or 50 feet. Ahead, I didn't see any sign of the passenger. I decided to try a three-point turn. I backed up a little, then turned the wheel and moved forward again. The angle was awkward because of the uneven ground, but after a few tries, I managed to face the car back toward the way I came. I checked the rear view mirror. Again, the two figures were still there, standing at the spot where I had stopped before. They hadn't followed me. I felt slightly less trapped, but still on edge. My heart was still racing, and my throat felt dry. I didn't see anyone else around. I didn't hear any voices. I rolled the window down just a bit to listen. Nothing. Absolute silence. I thought about calling someone, maybe reporting something to the police, but I had nothing concrete to say. No crime had been committed that I knew of. My passenger had simply left the car on his own. These two people were just standing there. Maybe they were local residents or people who lived out here. It didn't make sense, but I didn't have time to analyze. I just wanted to get out of there. I decided to leave. I pressed the gas pedal gently and started to move back the way I came. The dirt and gravel crunched under the tires. I kept looking in the mirror. The figures got smaller as I drove away. They still didn't move. When I reached the first turn, I slowed down and tried to remember which way we had come. The GPS tried to reroute me to the main road. I followed the route on the screen. The feeling in my chest eased a bit once I saw a more recognizable road sign. I passed it and saw a faint light in the distance, probably from a farmhouse. I didn't know what to think. I felt sweaty and tired. My hands were shaking a little, so I gripped the wheel harder. I just wanted to get back to the city. After a few more turns, I reached a paved road with a single street lamp at the corner. I slowed down under the lamp, glanced at my phone, and took a second to breathe. I thought about the passenger. He had seemed calm but had led me out to that dark place. Why, he never told me. He never explained. Maybe he had friends waiting for him there. Maybe he was involved in something I didn't understand, but I didn't see him meet anyone. I only saw those two figures. After he left, I kept driving until I found my way back onto a familiar road. I passed a gas station that was closed for the night. The neon sign was off, and there were no cars around. I didn't stop. I wanted to get back to the main part of the city. After another 15 minutes, I saw the distant glow of street lights. I turned onto a busier street and felt some relief. A few cars passed by. The normal sounds of civilization surrounded me again. I felt safer. I didn't know who those people were or why they were out there. I didn't know what my passenger purpose was, but I was back in a place with lights and people. I ended the ride on the app. It showed that the trip had been completed successfully. Payment processed. There was no comment from the passenger, no rating left. I sat there for a moment, engine idling at a red light, and tried to calm down. My throat was still dry. I noticed my shirt was damp under the arms. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked tired. I pressed my lips together, then took a sip of water from the bottle I keep in the cup holder. The water was lukewarm, but it helped. I decided I wouldn't tell anyone about this ride right away. I didn't even know how to describe it. Just a strange trip to a dark place. The passenger disappeared, and I saw two people in the dark. No one attacked me. No one demanded anything. Nothing was stolen. It was just odd and unsettling. I gripped the wheel and continued driving, heading back toward more familiar neighborhoods. I'd picked up another passenger an hour later, a normal guy going to a hotel. That trip went fine, but I didn't shake the feeling that something had been off that night. Even now, I remember those two figures standing in the darkness, not moving, not speaking, just watching. I remember the Chill in my chest, my heart pounding, and the absolute silence around us. I remember the passenger's calm voice telling me to turn off the main route. I remember the absence of any normal signs of life. I never found out what it meant, and I guess I never. Well, I was sitting on a wooden bench near the center of a public park. It was late, probably close to midnight, but I didn't check the time. I had gone out for a run because I couldn't sleep. The weather was mild, the air still. The park had a jogging path that looped around a pond and some trees. There were a few lampposts, but most of the path was dark. I had been running for about 20 minutes when I decided to rest. I stopped near a bench under a dim lamp. The area around me was quiet, no wind, no voices, no distant cars. The ground was a mix of dirt and gravel. It crunched a little under my shoes. When I approached the bench, I sat down and leaned forward to catch my breath. I felt sweat on my forehead and back. My legs were warm and a little tired. I didn't hear anyone else around. I glanced left, and right to my right was a small patch of tall bushes. To my left, about 20 feet away, there was another bench under a weaker light. At first, I didn't notice anyone there. Then I turned my head again and saw a figure sitting very still. It was a person, dressed in dark clothing. I couldn't see any details. There was no movement. This person was sitting on the bench in a rigid posture and seemed to be looking straight at me. I squinted and tried to see more clearly. The light was not good. The figure had a hood pulled up over its head. I couldn't see a face. I thought maybe they were wearing a ski mask or something similar. They didn't move at all. I felt a sudden tension in my shoulders. There was something off about how still they were. I waited a few seconds, expecting them to turn away or get up or do something. They remained completely still. I decided it was time to get moving. I didn't want to hang around. Something about the figure made me nervous. It could have been just another runner taking a break, but I didn't see any sign of normal behavior. Most people would look around, cough, stretch, or adjust their position. This person did none of that. I stood up and stretched my arms. I looked away from the figure, trying to appear casual. Then I turned and started walking back toward the path. As I took my first steps, I glanced over my shoulder. The figure stood up too. I didn't like that. My legs turned. I slowed down and tried to remember which way we had come. The GPS tried to reroute me to the main road. I followed the route on the screen. The feeling in my chest eased a bit once I saw a more recognizable road sign. I passed it and saw a faint light in the distance, probably from a farmhouse. I didn't know what to think. I felt sweaty and tired. My hands were shaking a little, so I gripped the wheel harder. I just wanted to get back to the city. After a few more turns, I reached a paved road with a single street lamp at the corner. I slowed down under the lamp, glanced at my phone, and took a second to breathe. I thought about the passenger. He had seemed calm but had led me out to that dark place. Why, he never told me. He never explained. Maybe he had friends waiting for him. There maybe he was involved in something I didn't understand, but I didn't see him meet anyone. I only saw those two figures. After he left, I kept driving until I found my way back onto a familiar road. I passed a gas station that was closed for the night. The neon sign was off, and there were no cars around. I didn't stop. I wanted to get back to the main part of the city. After another 15 minutes, I saw the distant glow of street lights. I turned onto a busier street and felt some relief. A few cars passed by. The normal sounds of civilization surrounded me again. I felt safer. I didn't know who those people were or why they were out there. I didn't know what my passenger purpose was, but I was back in a place with lights and people. I ended the ride on the app. It showed that the trip had been completed successfully. Payment processed. There was no comment from the passenger, no rating left. I sat there for a moment, engine idling at a red light, and tried to calm down. My throat was still dry. I noticed my shirt was damp under the arms. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked tired. I pressed my lips together, then took a sip of water from the bottle. I keep in the cup holder. The water was lukewarm, but it helped. I decided I wouldn't tell anyone about this ride right away. I didn't even know how to describe it. Just a strange trip to a dark place. The passenger disappeared, and I saw two people in the dark. No one attacked me. No one demanded anything. Nothing was stolen. It was just odd and unsettling. I gripped the wheel and Continued driving, heading back toward more familiar neighborhoods. I picked up another passenger. An hour later, a normal guy going to a hotel. That trip went fine, but I didn't shake the feeling that something had been off that night. Even now, I remember those two figures, standing in the darkness, not moving, not speaking, just watching. I remember the chill in my chest, my heart pounding, and the absolute silence around us. I remember the passenger's calm voice telling me to turn off the main route. I remember the absence of any normal signs of life. I never found out what it meant, and I guess I never. Well, I was sitting on a wooden bench near the center of a public park. It was late, probably close to midnight, but I didn't check the time. I had gone out for a run because I couldn't sleep. The weather was mild, the air still. The park had a jogging path that looped around a pond and some trees. There were a few lampposts, but most of the path was dark. I had been running for about 20 minutes when I decided to rest. I stopped near a bench under a dim lamp. The area around me was quiet, no wind, no voices, no distant cars. The ground was a mix of dirt and gravel. It crunched a little under my shoes. When I approached the bench, I sat down and leaned forward to catch my breath. I felt sweat on my forehead and back. My legs were warm and a little tired. I didn't hear anyone else around. I glanced left, and right to my right was a small patch of tall bushes. To my left, about 20 feet away, there was another bench under a weaker light. At first, I didn't notice anyone there. Then I turned my head again and saw a figure sitting very still. It was a person, dressed in dark clothing. I couldn't see any details. There was no movement. This person was sitting on the bench in a rigid posture and seemed to be looking straight at me. I squinted and tried to see more clearly. The light was not good. The figure had a hood pulled up over its head. I couldn't see a face. I thought maybe they were wearing a ski mask or something similar. They didn't move at all. I felt a sudden tension in my shoulders. There was something off about how still they were. I waited a few seconds, expecting them to turn away or get up or do something. They remained completely still. I decided it was time to get moving. I didn't want to hang around. Something about the figure made me nervous. It could have been just another runner taking a break, but I didn't see any sign of normal behavior. Most people would look around, cough, stretch, or adjust their position. This person did none of that. I stood up and stretched my arms. I looked away from the figure, trying to appear casual. Then I turned and started walking back toward the path. As I took my first steps, I glanced over my shoulder. The figure stood up too. I didn't like that. My legs